One of the many things that makes Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie so much fun to play through is the incredibly diverse approach they take to gameplay. Whether they're exploring, battling enemies, or flying through the air, Banjo and Kazooie can interact with the worlds around them in so many ways. Over the course of both games, Bottles and Jam Jars teach the Baron Bird a slew of moves that allow for different methods of traversal and puzzle solving. But one of the most unique mechanics from these games is the transformations. In Kazooie, Mumbo can turn Banjo into a number of animals, and also a pumpkin. In Tooie, Humbo Wumbo fulfills the role, and her transformations were a bit more creative, but we'll get to all that, as today I'm going to be ranking all of these transformations. I'm going to take into account their design, creativity, and applications, but I also want to recognize that the primary function of these transformations is just to be fun. Even at their worst, they provide a whimsical little twist, and they give these games a lot of personality. With that said, let's get started on this ranking, and feel free to list your own favorites in the comments. The walrus from Freezeezy Peak might be adorable, but unfortunately I have to put it at the bottom of my ranking, as I think it's the perfect example of all the flaws with this system. The only unique property it has is that it can withstand the freezing water, but this is only useful to collect a tiny handful of notes that you could just get with Wonderwing, and I think maybe one empty honeycomb. There are 2 Jiggies to collect with the walrus, and both of them are quite underwhelming. One of them you just get from another walrus, like all you have to do is talk to him while in walrus form. The other is a sled race, and there's no reason you couldn't ride this sled with Banjo. It's completely arbitrary. It's unfortunate, because Freezeezy Peak is one of my favorite levels, and I do love this little guy's design, but his application is lackluster and he's just kind of boring to play as. The Stony is Banjo-Tooie's first transformation, and similar to the walrus, it's just kinda boring. You can waddle around and slide attack enemies, and you can understand these little statue guys, but the Stony's primary function is to allow access to the kickball tournament. I actually kinda like this minigame, but since it is a minigame with unique mechanics, it doesn't make use of the transformation in any interesting way, just like the sled race. The Stony is a unique and creative idea, and it gives access to some funny dialogue and encounters, but I think it's weaker than the rest of the entries on this list. Glitter Gulchmine's Detonator transformation has a lot of potential, and I really like the idea. It handles in a clunky but fun and entertaining way, bouncing haphazardly, and I could see it being used in some really fun and unique platforming challenges, but this never happens. You can explode yourself to damage enemies and destroy obstacles, but this causes you to lose health. I really like this idea, and again it could have been used creatively, but the only thing you can really do with it is blow up a few piles of rubbles that are blocking passages. And doing this doesn't even make you lose health. I would have liked to see a section where you have to get past a bunch of enemies and tight platforming, while making sure you have enough health to blow up certain objects along the way. Sadly, the Detonator never realizes any of this potential, so I have to give it a low ranking. The bee can be found in both Banjo-Kazooie and Tooie, but this entry is specifically for the Kazooie version, found in Click Clock Wood. I'm infamously not a fan of this level at all, and that extends to its transformation. It can fly, which sets it apart from the other transformations in this game, and I would be ranking it much higher if it could leave the spring section of the level. For whatever reason, the bee is locked to this one area of the level, which makes it pretty much entirely pointless. This is especially frustrating because being able to use the bee across the entire level would make collecting the notes much less of a problem, and overall I think it would have made the level better. As it is, I don't even understand why they bothered putting a transformation in this level at all. I'm sure it is used for a Jiggy or two, but for the life of me I can't remember them. It's definitely mishandled, and contributes to making Click Clock Wood feel segmented and clumsy, at least for me. The pumpkin is potentially the most basic transformation in either of these games. It has no unique mechanics or attributes to speak of besides being small, but I like it quite a bit. Ironically, despite being so basic, it has better application than any of the transformations I've listed so far. It gives you an alternate way to traverse the dangers of Mad Monster Mansion, and it's fun to explore the little nooks and crannies for secrets and collectibles. Going down the toilet is a highlight of this level. This is a good example of how you can make this mechanic fun without doing something totally wacky, and while I still have to put it on the lower end of the list, I'll always defend the pumpkin. The termite was the first Banjo transformation ever, and it was a good introduction to the mechanic. There's not much to do with it, but I really like being able to climb around on these steep surfaces, and making the other termites jealous with my awesome swag. Since Mumbo's Mountain is so open, this is a completely viable way to explore it, and you can collect a huge chunk of the notes and several Jinjos just running around as a cute little termite. There's not too much to say about it, but I think it was a perfect way to familiarize players with the concept of transformations, and I always enjoy returning to it. In Banjo-Kazooie, Mumbo performed the transformations, but in Tooie, you can actually play as Mumbo, and I'm going to count it as a transformation since it kind of fills the same role. He handles similarly to Banjo, and you can zap enemies with his wand, but his main job is using Mumbo pads to do magic. His magic does different things on each level, like powering amusement park rides or bringing characters back to life. I love Mumbo, and when I was a kid, playing as him was its own reward, but playing it now, I have to say that it doesn't quite hold up. Banjo-Tooie is already a game that gets bogged down by unnecessary mechanics, and I talk about that in my retrospective video on that game. A lot of the time, having to change to Mumbo just kinda turns into an annoyance. But I still think it is a fun inclusion, and I wouldn't want to take it out of the game. It just could have been implemented better. The van from Witchy World is one of the most fun transformations on this list, if you ask me. You can putt around and ram enemies, and it's completely invincible. This is the only reason I'm ranking it this highly, since its actual uses are pretty lame. You can open these doors by honking at them, and you can pay to open this area of the level, and that's pretty much it. It's a good example of how this can still be a fun mechanic, even when it isn't done that well. You spend the vast majority of these games playing as Banjo and Kazooie, with each of them lending moves to the diverse control scheme. But Banjo-Tooie introduced a mechanic that allows you to split the duo up and play as them individually, and I figured I might as well include them here. Banjo loses all the mobility Kazooie offers on his own, making him much slower and less fun to play as. But what I really like about playing as Banjo is all the different ways you can use his backpack. He uses it to attack, he can sleep in it to regain health, he can hide in it and bounce around to get through hazards, and hop around in it like a sack to protect his bare feet. There are some creative uses for these mechanics, and it does enough to make him interesting to play as. Okay, so I've gone on record multiple times talking about how much I hate Pterodactyland, and that extends to its transformations, Baby and Daddy T-Rex. The very few uses they have are implemented terribly, and it contributes to making this level kind of awful to play. That being said, dinosaurs are cool, and stomping around as a massive T-Rex is fun enough on its own to justify a placement here. This one is carried entirely by its spectacle and style, so we will forgive its transgressions this once. The bee returns in Cloud Cuckoo Land, and it's much improved. It can shoot darts and do a speed boost, but the biggest improvement is just that it can access the whole level, and with this constraint lifted, it's actually a pretty fun transformation. It only has a couple of jiggies, and one of them is a minigame that easily could have been done with Banjo and Kazooie. In fact, there's a pretty much identical minigame in Witchy World, which makes this one a bit redundant. But the bee is still fun to buzz around and shoot things with, and I'm glad they brought it back. Kazooie spends all her time stuck in Banjo's backpack, so it's refreshing to see her get a chance to stretch her legs. Besides a couple of fun minigames and a few interesting jiggies, she's mostly used for hatching eggs, which is kind of boring, but I like playing as Kazooie a lot. She's just fun. She's quick and nimble, meaning you can cover ground much faster with her, and she can jump really high and glide through the air. Her health is low and her attacks are weak, so you have to be a bit more careful with her. It's just a nice change of pace, and like most everything on this list, I wish there was more to do with her. Bubblegloop Swamp is not one of my favorite levels in Banjo-Kazooie, but it is home to my favorite transformation from that game, the crocodile. It's by far the most fleshed out. It can navigate the dangerous swamp water with ease, and it's also the only Banjo-Kazooie transformation to have an attack. This is mainly used in a minigame that I don't enjoy that much, but it's a minigame that actually uses the unique control scheme of the crocodile itself, so I respect it for that. It also just looks kinda nice. Definitely one of the better transformations, and it makes my top 5. Hellfire Peaks is one of my favorite Banjo worlds, and its transformation makes really good use of its unique premise. It's a big snowball, complete with shorts and backpack, and it's right at home on the snowy side of Hellfire Peaks. Taking damage will cause you to shrink, but rolling around in the snow will make you grow and regain health. Things get complicated when you have to go to the lava side of the level. The heat causes you to slowly melt and take damage, so you gotta move quick. I really like this, but you only have to do it once, which is a shame. This was probably a conscious decision, and I understand it, since I've heard people point this out as one of their least favorite jiggies in the game, but I think they should have committed to it and included more sections where you have to traverse the lava side. Even so, the snowball is creative and fun enough to earn a spot at the top of the list, and it's one of my favorites. Renty Industries is a level many people hate, and for a lot of good reasons. I am not one of those people, even though it suffers from many of the same flaws that make me dislike other levels. It just works for me, and while I can't really justify this opinion, I will say that one of the many things I like about it is its transformation, the washing machine. I just think it's so funny to roll around as a dirty, squeaky washing machine, shooting underwear at enemies and washing clothes. It has a unique method of getting around the level in the form of these service elevators, and while this definitely adds to the level's clunk, I just like it. The washing machine was a bit of an Easter egg in Banjo-Kazooie, so I'm happy it came back as a full-on transformation in Tooie. So, in all my videos on Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, I have yet to bring up Stop and Swap, which was a scrapped idea that would have required you to find secrets in Banjo-Kazooie to unlock rewards in Tooie. One of these rewards was an ice key that would have unlocked the Mega Globo, which you can take to this random Humbawamba in Isle o' Hags to access a secret transformation. Instead of changing Banjo, this would transform Kazooie from a bird to a dragon. This changes her appearance and allows her to breathe fire, and it's just super cool. You can keep her like this for the entire game if you want, making it incredibly unique. It's a really fun secret, and even though I prefer Kazooie just the way she is, I can't deny that Dragon Kazooie is one of the neatest things in Banjo-Tooie. But in my opinion, the best Banjo transformation is a traditional one, found in Jolly Roger's Lagoon. The submarine is really cool on its surface. It can putt around the vast underwater caverns of Atlantis, defeating enemies with torpedoes and sonar. There's a pretty fun minigame you can do with it, and it provides a great way to explore. But the thing that really sets the sub apart is the fact that you can complete many of the underwater jiggies and challenges with it, including the boss fight. It's just an entirely alternate method to tackle the level, and it's entirely up to you if you want to do these challenges with Banjo and Kazooie or the submarine. I can't believe more of the transformations didn't attempt this, and it's a real shame. This is the transformation mechanic at its best, and it's one of the things that makes Jolly Roger's Lagoon my favorite Banjo world. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below, and consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. I hope you're doing well, and be sure to join me in the next video. But until next time, take care.